Walsh is out, who's going to be in? According to Politico, there are 3 top contenders for this job right now, one of which is Steve Witkoff, who is basically doing the shuttle diplomacy between United States and Russia, and also in the Middle East with Israel. Another one is Steve Miller, and another one is Sebastian Gorka. Let's take about each of these first of all. Steve Witkoff. Look, he is doing an admirable job. He's come under some fire lately by some people for not being sufficiently pro-war against Iran. He's taken actually a lot of heat for that. And so you see this continuing pressure of anything that has anything to do with what some allege that Israel wants, which is war with Iran. Anyone who doesn't have that kind of view is putting pressure on. We also had 3 members of the senior staffers in the Department of Defense, Dan Caldwell and a couple of others that were fired. And some of the reporting behind the scenes says that they were let go because they were not pro war with Iran enough. You saw Dan Caldwell on Tucker Carlson made that exact same statement. So now here we have another one, which appears to be that people are putting pressure on Trump and on the administration to suppress anyone who cautions that we don't go to war with Iran. Now, I'll just, as an aside here, just categorically tell you that is one of the stupidest things that America could do. It is one of the most foolish things that Israel could do. Their security is not threatened by, it is not an existential threat. Let me clarify that from Iran. Iran is a nuisance. Iran is an adjutant, and they have definitely conducted some terrorist activities, but that pales in comparison to what has been done to them by Israel. Israel has destroyed an embassy compound of Iran. They have assassinated leaders all over the place, and I mean scores of them. They've attacked into the capital city. I mean, clearly Israel is much more of a threat to the history of Iran than the other way around. And Israel does have nuclear weapons, and they could eliminate the Ayatollah regime at any time if they wanted to break that nuclear taboo. But if it's just conventional weapons, Iran doesn't have the capacity to destroy Israel. And so they are deterred. They've been deterred since they existed in 1979, and that will be able to go forward. It makes no sense whatsoever to try and pick a fight with somebody who's otherwise not going to pose a threat to you, because if you go to war with them, then they are going to respond. They will retaliate. You will lose Jewish people. If you love Jews, if you love the Israeli people, and you don't want to see them harmed, then you don't want to support them going to war against Iran, because that will result in casualties. Could be a lot. It could be civilians, especially if Iran gets to the point to where it thinks it's an existential strike, and then it has no reason to restrain itself, and it can rain lots of missiles down in populated areas of Israel should it want to do that. It can kill Americans in the region because some of their missiles can penetrate our local air defense systems there. All of that is bad for America. All of it is bad for Israel. There's no reason to do it. So when you see a lot of these people who say that they're pro-Israel, in reality, they are pro-war. And that their actions, if acted upon, can harm Israel. Harm Israel in ways that it doesn't need to be harmed, kill Americans in ways that none of them need to be put at risk, etc. Let's call that out for what it is. So I want to be very clear on that. So any of this nonsense about somebody not being sufficiently pro-Israel, I love Israel. In fact, I would argue and do vehemently that my policies, should they be followed, would protect Israel far, far more than the likes of Laura Loomer and any of these other people who want to press for war with Iran under this delusion that somehow that will make Israel safer. It will not. It will get Israelis killed, and it will put their future in increasing doubt if they get into a war with that. Not that I have any strong feelings on this point, but we'll continue on. Now, back to Witkoff, though. So that's some of the pressure he's been coming under. But listen, he's been doing an admirable job in the diplomatic role he's been put into. As a real estate mogul and guy who's long time been in the real estate world, he understands about negotiations in business and otherwise. So he has some skill set that can be adapted and applied to here. And he has some knowledge about the Middle East, et cetera. And so he has international dealings as well. So he's got a good head on his shoulders. And for some of these diplomatic things, he's done some admirable work here. One can argue that his lack of knowledge specifically on diplomacy or in international relations has been a hamper, but at least what we've seen so far, that's something is that's going to happen here. That's something that's going on. But when you're talking about the National Security Advisor, that's going to be a different problem, because you have to be steeped in the understanding of international relations. You have to be an expert in understanding of military affairs, what you can and what you cannot accomplish by military, etc. Because by definition of the title, National Security Advisor, you've got to understand if the president wants to go down a certain path, if he wants a certain policy outcome that has to do with the security realm, you've got to know, if we use military force here, is that going to work? If we don't use military force here, is that going to accomplish our goal better? And if you can't, with a lot of confidence and certainty, say, yes, Mr. President, this won't work, and here's why. Or, yes, Mr. President, that will work, and here's why, but here's what might be the consequences. Here's might be the second and third order effects questions that you might not be thinking about, that might not be self-evident. That's what you need in a national security advisor, somebody who has deep knowledge about all those things and can help you see things that you wouldn't otherwise get. So that's one of the big things, and that Witkoff doesn't have that. So his business dealings, that's not something he's going to be able to work with. It's not going to help him in that regard. He may have a good head on his shoulders, but he doesn't have the knowledge about the things that really matter in that position. So I would think that's not going to be a good fit. Stephen Miller and Sebastian Gorka, they don't have any knowledge about that either. They have policy experience. They have very strong opinions about things, especially in the Middle East. And that's not going to serve the president well if either one of those guys gets the position, because they have a very strong personal agenda and very shallow knowledge about the things about national security. So we'll have to wait and see how that's going to work out. But that is the really the skinny on this. That's at least who's being reported. That's not coming from the White House. That's what Politico is suggesting about. They've talking to people who have some alleged insider knowledge about what people are thinking, but we'll see what it actually happens to happen. Obviously, in terms of who would be a great choice, I would say Doug McGregor would be, because he has very deep knowledge about all of those things I mentioned. But I doubt he would pass the Laura Loomer test, so that he might not get very far there. He has worked with President Trump in the past. You may recall that he was a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and did have some direct engagement with the president during his first term. So I guess it's not totally out of the bounds of possibility. That's what I would do if I was asked my opinion. I would recommend Doug McGregor, but we'll see what's going to happen. In any case, as soon as we hear anything more, as soon as we hear something on what's going to happen with any statements coming out of the White House, any whether it's a speech by the president or any release statement, we'll get that to you as soon as we can. In the meantime, we have, like I said, Alexander Mercurius up at 2:30, so just a little over an hour from now, talking some more about what's going on with the Russia-Ukraine war, and we will see you then on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.